Berger okay? You subbed him out final couple.
Yeah, he felt a little bit on his quad on that strikeout. Wanted to stay in. He said he wanted to fight me to stay in. So I don't want to fight him. I don't feel like I'd win. But I had to make the move. I need him for the week. We need him for the next week. It just, once we added a couple more runs, it just felt like, get him off his feet and try to get, both Louis and him healthy for, this run we're trying to make.
Was he able to do maybe treatment during the game?
He was, yeah.
Okay.
Cueto warming up just the ninth to get him some work, or?
Yeah, he's needed some work, for this road trip.
I would say it's regular season home finale, but is it weird because if things go how you guys would want, you'd be back here in 2 weeks? What's the vibe like with that weird kind of situation where you don't have this certain future ahead of you?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everything I know, I've told you this before, everything I know I've learned from somebody or some organization. And St. Louis always had thanking the fans, and we wouldn't be here without thanking the without the fans coming here. So just in case this is our last game here, which I hope it's not, I just wanted the players to understand how important it is that that crowd was behind you, and especially today it was pretty loud and electric and fun, and we felt it. So I just felt like it was, we did that after every home game in St. Louis, and maybe we'll make it a thing here. We'll see what happens, but hopefully that's not the last one. But it was just in case. That's what that kind of was.
Tanner, we've talked about him so much all year. 100 strikeouts today for the season. Obviously, big milestone for a reliever to see him hit a milestone like that and giving you guys what you guys need down the stretch.
Again, in high leverage most of the year too. So he's not punching out the bottom of the order. He's punching out the big boys in the middle, the top in the middle of the order. So it's been a really impressive year. I've said it before. It's like Hader and Tanner Scott for me. Those are the guys, and I don't think anybody wants to face him lefty or righty. He's throwing 92-mile-an-hour sliders, 3-2 count. I mean, that's a tough at bat, and you could see him just growing into being that closer, the mentality, the leader in the bullpen. He's just kind of growing into that role as well, and it's been, again, he's one of many guys. It's just fun to watch what they were in spring to what they are now.
With Xavier Edwards, what are you seeing from him coming out for a rise to multi-hit game, multi-stolen base game? How has he been able to just come out at those moments where you need him and he's performing at that level?
Well, you're only as good as your bench. I've said that a long time. For a lot of this year, it's that you have to put guys in when guys are out of the lineup and you plug and play, that you don't feel it as a lineup or as a staff. With X in there, we didn't feel it, right? I mean, and we lost the guy that's going to win the batting title this year, most likely in the National League. And he's X fills in really good defensively, steals a couple bags, does what kind of Arias does, is put it in play, which is pretty cool to watch. And X has a calmness to him as well. We talked about Cabby, but not much, emotion, doesn't get real high or low. He feels like he's a big leaguer, and he's ready for that next step and to kind of show us and to prove it. This is a prove it league, and he's proving that he's a big leaguer.
All right, welcome in everyone. Thank you for taking a break from your football Sunday, but this is definitely one of the better ones that we've had at the State of the Fish. Unfortunately, just timing makes our viewership a little bit lower, but thank you for tuning in. Fish on First, State of the Fish coming up late in the season. Marlins are one game out of a wild card spot with tiebreakers over virtually every team now that the San Francisco Giants have kind of eliminated themselves from the running a little bit unless they make some miraculous run this week. We got Eli here, a couple Fish on First guys listening. Of course, we will hear from you guys about halfway through the show. We will get to your fan questions, aka the best part of the show, but a very up and down week in review, I would say, just because it's kind of inverse series of like what you expected. I think most of us expected to take 2 out of 3 against the struggling Mets, the very disappointing Mets, and to lose 2 or 3 games to the red hot Brewers, who have just really taken the bull by the horns in the second half of the season and have seemingly run away with the NL Central. They clinched a playoff spot this weekend, and after maybe the worst beatdown the Marlins have faced in quite some time Friday night, probably the worst since that 29-9 Braves loss 3 years ago. Marlins bounced back, won 2 games on a 2-game winning streak right now, heading into the final road trip of the regular season. So Eli, I mean, this Mets series, we'll start there. Not quite what you expected. Some close losses from a Marlins team that has succeeded very much in close games. Just kind of what happened against that struggling Mets squad.
I don't know if I totally agree about it being a surprising series loss. I'd say the way that they lost was very surprising, considering that Tanner Scott had the game in his hands 2 times. They won one of those games, but for him to have back-to-back outings that were just straight up bad in that situation was a shock to the system, because he had been, by almost any measure, one of the best relievers in all of baseball for the whole season, and especially over the last month and a half leading right up to that. That was a surprise. Mainly, the reason why they were in those positions, though, is to rely on him is because the offense was not very good in those 3 games. They combined for 8 runs in those 3 games, so less than 3 runs a game. And that's what we've seen from this lineup. They are as streaky can be, which is an improvement over where they were for like the first half of the season. They were just a straight up bad offense for so much of this year. And since the trade deadline upgrades of Bell and Berger, when both of those guys are on at the same time and the rest of the lineup is at full strength, then it could be pretty potent. But even then, we've just seen a lot of these ups and downs from this lineup from a few days at a time. Whenever they like explode for a crooked number one day, you always worry that maybe they should have spread out those runs over a greater number of games. And this was kind of the coming down from where they had just been right before that against the Braves, of course, where against those Braves in those 3 games, it was the highest scoring series they've had all season. And it was, to me, almost expected that there would be some sort of a come down there, kind of regardless of the competition. That's what has made this team so bizarre, is it's almost unimportant who it is that they're playing against. It's just the timing of when they play against them. You could say early in the year that wasn't the case, but really for the whole second half of the season, it has just been up and down and up and down and up and down with this. And you average it out, and they have done enough to tread water and stay alive here at the very end. Just going back to what you said, though, I think most people would be on that same side, that they thought the Mets series lined up a lot more favorably for this team, and that the Brewers series was way more intimidating, especially because of the probable starters that the Brewers sent out. And the way that it turns out is just the reversal of that, where they end up taking 2 out of 3 from the Brewers instead to totally bounce back from where they were during earlier in the week.
So we'll fast forward now. No need to spend too much time on the Mets series, just because we have a lot to cover. Of course, with this maybe being the biggest week of Marlins baseball recent history coming up. But the Brewers this weekend talked about how the Mets matched up a lot more favorably. Well, the Marlins were quite literally pitching underdogs in every single matchup this weekend. Had to face Corbin Burns, Brandon Woodruff, and Freddie Peralta all 3 games this weekend. Take 2 out of 3 despite losing the run differential margin by kind of a lot with Friday night's loss. But just resilience from this team. But a team that's kind of just been like very up and down against starting pitching competition this year. How did they get to some of those better starting pitchers this weekend?
They got to Woodruff just immediately. I don't know how exactly they did it, but that is the way that it played out. Where just immediately in that middle game, scoring the 3-run homer that Berger got, and then threatening the next couple innings, getting him out of there. He was kind of lucky to make it through 5 in that one. Yeah, when they hit home runs, it is, you like to think the Marlins insist that this is not the case, but it is true with them, as it is with most other teams, is your success as an offense is so contingent on how many balls you actually hit over the wall. And when they have 1 or 2 of them early in the game, in the early innings, then that makes all the difference right here. So Berger's swing went a long way, although Woodruff to me just looked uncomfortable there from the get-go. A guy that had been just red hot start after start, not just against the Marlins in Milwaukee, but over a larger sample since coming back from his injury. He'd been as good as anybody in the rotation, right up there with and Freddie Peralta is kind of in that same conversation. So it is kind of surprising that both of them were pretty mediocre in this one, with Woodruff going those 5 innings. And I think Peralta today, he didn't even last that long, only going 3+ innings. And they almost, that was a very interesting way, the way that they managed that. If they hadn't already clinched a postseason spot, if they weren't already comfortable with where they were going, I think Peralta would have stayed in a little longer today. Yeah, that was fascinating with him is that they just did it. They had a couple of those home runs, most really surprisingly from Birdie and then also from Josh Bell. And they had a lot of hits in between then, but a lot of those other hits that weren't home runs, they didn't lead to anything. They loaded the bases with nobody out against Peralta in the first inning and got nothing from it. And then later in the game, they loaded the bases again. I think that must have been against Tehran at that point. And even though it seems good, we know from following this team that so often when they put the most runners on, that is when they blue ball you. And that's when that's when the double play is going to come at some point. You don't know who's going to hit into the double play, but it's going to be somebody. And today in that first inning, it was Brian De La Cruz that ended that threat. It's always somebody up and down this lineup, up and down this roster. You can see the way that they stack up against the rest of the league. That's the one constant about this offense has simply been the double plays in there. So today, in the series finale, in this all important rubber game, they're able to overcome it. And for Edward Cabrera to so definitively outpitch Freddie Peralta, that's a nice surprise. And Cabrera we knew he was going to be an important piece of this team down the stretch when they called him back up weeks ago. And with both Sandy out and now Yuri shut down, he is you could say that he's been as critical as anybody on this team his last couple outings, and he will be when he makes presumably one more appearance in Pittsburgh at the very end of the year, assuming they're still alive for a wild card spot. Right then, I was really impressed with Eddie today, especially with his off-speed stuff, probably his curveball more so than anything else. But both his curveball and his changeup today were pretty awesome. And you touched on it. I was going to bring it myself about how I don't know what the record is or how exactly to look it up conveniently, but this has been just an unprecedented degree of times where the Marlins get outscored by their opponents and yet win the series anyway. It happens so much during this season, this being the latest examples. They punt on Friday's game, but they are so good at flushing that when they get blown out and going back out there and refocusing and being resilient. So that has been a constant with his team, and you really have no choice but to credit the personalities in that clubhouse, both the players and the coaches as well, for like having them do that. It is not an easy thing to do. It's extremely rare, and yet they've done it over and over and over again this year.
Well said. And we talked about Eddie's outing today, and while it's relevant, while we're still reflecting on the last week, injuries. It seems to be the main storyline right now with just the roster construction of the team. Arise battling that ankle injury. Of course, that's not a pitcher, though, and Soler did come back, so get those out of the way. We'll talk about those in a minute. Pitching staff, which was once viewed by national media, at least, as Miami's biggest strength, is not 100% a weakness, but a blemish right now on the resume of a wild card contending team. A lot of question marks. Sandy, who we thought at one point last week was going to pitch 2 more starts. He was supposed to pitch Tuesday in game 162, and what would have been a very ambitious comeback attempt after UCL sprain, re-aggravated the injury, it seemed, and will not pitch again in 2023. Yeri Perez, who we knew was kind of reaching that innings limit, probably wasn't going to make too many more starts anyways. Reached his limit going on the IL. Don't expect to see him again this year. Don't know if they confirmed or not he's done for the year, but we probably won't expect to see him again. So now, what do you do? It is good that Eddie Cabrera did step up. I believe we don't want to look too far ahead here yet because we'll touch on it in a minute, but the Mets series this week, I believe Wednesday's a TBA. I forget who goes Tuesday and Thursday, though. I forget off the top of my head. I believe Brax is one of those days.
Yeah.
Brax is the first one, TBA, and then Luzardo.
Okay. But fortunately, I believe we may have touched on this last week, or maybe it was in conversation with someone recently. Come playoff time, you don't necessarily need a 5-man rotation to contend. And I think that's something that may benefit the Marlins. Would you guys agree with that? What kind of approach did they take given the fact that they're just losing arms after arms after arms, which was presumably one of their strengths, is now a giant question mark when it comes to roster construction?
That's a disagreement in my view with that. You don't need 5 starting pitchers to be serious. Today was great, though. I mean, you guys already touched on it. Today was awesome. To take two against the Brewers was awesome, and I agree with Eli that Eddie was really good. But I don't think if you're a serious team that you can go into the playoffs if they make it there. I don't think you can go into the playoffs with every fifth day being a question mark. That's a real problem. And I think that's where the Marlins are right now. Like they do not have five starters. They have four, arguably. Maybe less, but they do at least have four guys that can go multiple innings. They don't have four or five true starting pitchers on this team right now, and that's going to be a real hindrance if this team wants to make the playoffs. So today was great, man. Just being in the park today was. Danny was there. I know Kevin was there. Lewis was there. So just being in the park today and like. Even on the day of a Dolphins home game where they scored 70 points, which was ridiculous, but I know this is not a Dolphin show, but yeah, the Dolphins scored 70 points today, so that's an aside. But just seeing the support that they got, and then after the game where the buses are going off and people are cheering them off, and like that looked really good, and that's something that the Marlins haven't had in a long time. So the fan base is here for this team. The fan base is supporting this team. It was very loud in that crowd today, and man, just walking through that concourse today. Just looking at everything that happened, I walked through the concourse as I was leaving. I was only really there for the minor league awards portion, but man, just walking through that concourse today and hearing that crowd cheer, and as loud as I've heard it in a very long time. So people care about the Marlins, and like we always say, if you start winning games in this market, people are going to show up. If you're in it this late in the year, people are going to start to show up. So even with a Miami Dolphins, has always been a football town here in South Florida, even with a Dolphins home game going on, which they won favorably. People cared about the Marlins today, and people came out and showed out for the Marlins today. So hopefully they can honor that commitment to the fan base.
So Eli or Daniel, I do want to hear what your thoughts on it. Are the Marlins true if they try and go bullpen every fifth day when it comes to the postseason? What do you try and do to fill that hole, considering the fact that they've kind of done this for a month now? What do you do?
I'll have to bring Daniel back in there. He got kicked for some reason. But
showing as a speaker for me.
But yeah, it's not a great situation. Matt Moore, I was kind of pounding the table for them to get Matt Moore off waivers a few weeks ago, and as we know, they wanted to and weren't able to. I'm glad before it was too late that they were able to scoop him up, and we've seen him the last couple of days. Somebody that was pitching pretty poorly right before being claimed, but for most of the season, he's been brilliant. For most of the last 2 seasons, he's been brilliant. And that's somebody that definitely lengthens their bullpen, who, I mean, people are familiar with Matt Moore. He was a starter for a very long time. You're not going to stretch him out more than a couple, maybe 2 innings at this point, just because he hasn't done it recently. Yet that is still somebody pretty critical, because outside of Tanner and Nardi, there's a pretty big drop off. There are tiers to the circle of trust that Skip has, and that drop off from the Nardi and Tanner tier to everybody else is pretty huge. To have Moore, who I think kind of goes now right below them in that hierarchy, and have him available, and have him motivated as a pending free agent to do well and get himself a new deal. That's somebody that I think they're going to lean on very heavily over this next week. And then if they do make it into the postseason, leaning on him there as well. We do have on the horizon. I actually hadn't checked if Huascar Brazaban made his scheduled rehab appearance today in the AAA Jacksonville season finale. Today he he did not pitch well. He was also 2 innings. He went 1 2/3, allowed 3 earned on 4 hits, 1 walk. 31 pitches. I assume he's still going to come back and meet the team in New York and be available on Tuesday. But that being said, he's kind of a long way removed from being one of the key pieces of this bullpen, unfortunately. As good as he was very early in the year in April and May, not quite as consistent ever since then, even when he's been healthy. So you just go through the list, and it's not a whole lot of great options in there. Johnny Cueto, he's been forced to the pen, but it doesn't really make him any more effective over there. He wouldn't be part of any postseason plans if they were to get that far in here. It's no doubt it's a really tough spot. We spoke about this a week ago when there was a little bit of hope alive that Sandy would come back, and I kind of downplayed that when it was brought up about Sandy potentially being able to start playoff games. But we did think that Yuri would still be around potentially. Like it wasn't a foregone conclusion that he would be shut down before then. And they found this little back issue that made it a pretty simple choice for them, because he was saying that it affected him just enough that they didn't want to take any chances with it. So it's a really grim situation, because both Braxton and Luzardo, for the most part, they've handled the length of the season a lot better than expected. But once you get past them, it's a really concerning proposition for this team, and they'll be at a disadvantage if they go up against Milwaukee yet again in that first round, which is the most likely outcome if they do make it in. Then they're once again on paper going to be at a pretty big disadvantage.
Eli, do you think there's room for? I know he wasn't great his last time out, but do you think there's room just because of necessity for Ryan Weathers to come back?
I know that he did finish the year very well at AAA. Overall, a 2.5 ERA with Jacksonville after the trade. His very final game actually was one of his worst. Overall, pitched well down there. I don't think he can have any confidence about it translating to the majors right now. He's on the roster, but I mean, he just looks so out of place in both of the times that he pitched on the big league team since that deadline. So yeah, he's really far in the back of my mind. I don't see that happening, even though he's stretched out and he's available. It's a pretty big leap, as we're reminded again and again and again and again, from AAA to the majors. So I wouldn't have any level of confidence in him if he came back up, unfortunately.
It's grim right now, like Eli said. Not a lot of solutions, because unless I'm missing something, you've got Edwards, you've got Braxton, you've got Luzardo. The other 2 days, what do? I mean, the wild card series, you can at least get past that. Hope you win 2 games right away. Save yourself until that weekend when the NLDS starts. But then once you get to these 5-game and 7-game series, I mean, what do? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's really a world realistically where the Marlins can go win the NLCS given given the way that this rotation is now. I mean, I know postseason baseball, you never say never about anyone, especially with this new format, but it just does not. This just seems very, very bleak right now.
Well, we've been watching this team a lot, and we know how Skip manages it. I can assure you they're not going to sweep any postseason series. In that first game, they're going to get blown out. They're going to use Stallings for 3 innings and save all their other arms for the rest of the season, the rest of the series. That seems to be the strategy. I think that is how you optimize it, is by punting on games when you fall behind by a significant margin and saving everybody else for the upcoming games, and just hope for the best in that situation. That would seem to be the best course of action. And we're reminded almost every single postseason, there is an upset. There is a team that seems to be undermanned in terms of either depth or star power or both, and they find a way to surprise you over the course of a very small sample. That's what people love and hate about the postseason. You hate it if you're one of the favored teams. You hate it if you're a Braves fan, for example, who through the years, they make the playoffs almost every year and yet very rarely win the whole thing, because there's a lot of randomness that happens. So I think people should be ecstatic if they make it in one way or the other, and they should have a little bit of hope regardless of who they face, because it's proven so often in baseball history that things are really volatile and unpredictable in small samples. But if we do want to predict it as best we can, I really think that the regular season behavior that Skip has had, where even when they look so bad on certain nights, it doesn't necessarily have to impact them in future nights. And especially when you're talking about the pitching staff, that simply means keep staying away from your most trustworthy pitchers until you really smell blood in the water and a chance to win games. So that's what I would expect to see over this next week to give them the best chance to get in. And then also if they make it in, that Skip is still not going to be afraid to punt certain games in order to prepare them as best they can for whatever comes next.
You're sitting at 1 game out, right? Like right now, they're at a game out. Like even after today, they won today, right? So even after today, what I'm looking at is that they're still a game out. Like they're still 81-75. They're 1 game out from the Cubs. How many games or how many chances from the games that they have left can you really just say you're going into the game expecting to lose? That's a losing mentality, and it's not something that the team can do right now if they want to make it into the playoffs. And what's the answer? That's the question on the other side, is what's your answer? What's your answer for pitching? And the Marlins don't really have one. So That's why I've said from the start, like, not that I'm rooting for this or anything like that, but what I've said from the start is, it's just that complete 180 with pitching. You had the injuries to Max Meyer, you had the injury and then trade of Jake Eater. And then, other guys behind that, like Dax, I wouldn't even think that he would be ready this year, but he got injured as well. But it's just not enough on the pitching side. And it's just that complete 180 with pitching. And just at times not enough on the offensive side of the baseball to get you through having to go to a bullpen day as often as the Marlins are having to do it at least once a week. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be tough. I mean, just get in any way you can. That's what we really want the Marlins to do right now. Today was good. This series was good, but you got some teams there that are sitting there waiting to just bring a presumptive and unfortunate end, including the Mets, Pirates. Like, you have teams that are just waiting to play spoiler. So I don't know. I'm probably right now at like a 40-60. 40% that they would make it and 60% that they wouldn't, because maybe I've just been following the Marlins too long. You know what I mean? I don't know, but yeah, it's going to be an interesting final stretch here to the end of the season.
There's really only one game coming up that I'm looking at as, that might be your quintessential skip punt game. Wednesday, the TBA day. Fangraphs is saying Cueto that day. I forget the last time he pitched, honestly, but that would be against Kodai Senga. Maybe that is, but what you said about pitching, I mean, no one can really predict injuries, but you look at Jake Eater, I mean, are the Marlins in this position if they don't make that trade? Probably not. I mean, Jake Berger's been immensely valuable, and I know one player doesn't make a team, but the offense is already just like very like bottom third-ish of the league still, maybe in that second third. But where are you at if you don't go make those roster moves? I mean, it's a tough spot. Thinking about the Marlins' future is very grim, and we're not going to do that today because we are literally doing State of the Fish with playoffs on our minds with 6 games left in the season. We're 156 games down, and the Marlins are a game-back wildcard spot, so I'm not going to do that today. But I guess without further ado, let's go ahead and do what maybe could be our final week ahead of the season. Hopefully not, but it'll be the final look ahead of the regular season. We already mentioned one of the pitching matchups, but I think everyone knows who's on the docket. We've all had this final week scheduled for quite some time, kind of looked at how on paper these teams aren't great, but like Alex did say, they could be waiting to play spoiler. We know they're waiting to play spoiler. I mean, the Pirates put up an excellent fight this weekend against the Reds. The Mets put up a pretty good fight against the Phillies, I believe. I haven't paid too much attention to that series, but just because I'm back home in Cincinnati for the weekend, definitely been watching some of the Reds games this weekend. The Pirates just put up a good fight, and the Pirates, I believe they play the Phillies this week too. So the Pirates have got themselves caught in a lot of really important games late in the season when they're completely out of it. I believe with the way it lines up right now, game 162, the Marlins would have to face flamethrower Mitch Keller, so that doesn't help out a ton. But you got the Mets for 3 games, got the Pirates for 3 games. Believe Fish on First will be at all 6 of those games in some way, shape, or form. So, Eli, what are we looking at ahead this week? What should we really watch for besides the main storylines, of course?
Yeah, I try not to look ahead to the Pirates because the Mets come first, but what the Pirates have done over the last week really has been shocking, to say the least, considering, where they are and that they don't even have all their impact young guys around at the same time. People were waiting for O'Neal Cruz to come back from injury, and he never made it back. And yet they went on that run of 4 straight wins earlier this week against both the Cubs and the Reds. That proves extremely helpful to this team. And they did it mostly with their offense, which I did not see coming, because this is a team that you just don't recognize a lot of these guys that are in their lineup. You recognize Brian Reynolds, and he's been a little bit below his career norms this entire year. Yet it's been just the fact that it's been the depth more so of their lineup that is kind of making the difference. They're getting enough from all their young guys that are, even if not one of them is truly taking off, it just makes their lineup hard to pitch to. And even when they get shut down for a good portion of the game, they really find a way later on to put up crooked numbers on the board with them. So yeah, with the Pirates, that was one that we thought on paper would look like a very soft landing at the very end of the year. And But in this case, talking about what we did with the state of this pitching staff and the fact that, well, you're going to have let's see, if we look at going back to the Mets and who we have on Tuesday, it's Braxton on Tuesday. So he might pitch again on Sunday if you absolutely need him to, if that game is still important for whatever reason. But you're not going to have Luzardo obviously available in any capacity for that second series. He's got one more in him against this Mets team. As shaky as this Marlins pitching staff is, you could say that about both of these other teams as well. It's really just Kodai Senga is kind of the one guy on that Mets staff right now that is extremely intimidating. Yet when they faced him in Miami, that was a really bizarre game because even if they didn't put much on the board against him, he just had no ability to miss bats. Who was it that I was speaking to that was looking at his strikeout prop for that game in Miami and felt pretty comfortable taking the over? And
It might have been me.
and he didn't come close to doing that. Not close whatsoever. Yet they didn't. It was a weird game because you'd think that when he was off his game like that, when he doesn't get his whiffs with his slider and his ghost fork, that he's somebody that is very beatable. And yet it was an odd situation where he wasn't on top of his game at all. And yet they couldn't fully take advantage of it with him. So I don't know exactly what to expect from Senga there. This has been a very long season for him. And compared to what he's used to in Japan, where you make not quite as many starts and you have more recovery time in between starts as well. But overall, he's been pretty terrific. So I feel like if they get that version of Senga again that they got in Miami, that it's going to end a lot better this time. If you're able to get your ball, like put so many balls in play, or at least spoil so many pitches and extend at bats that you're going to get them out of the game early, even if you don't put up big runs, and then you could kind of take advantage of it. Overall, these are two teams that they both sold at the deadline. I said this when they faced the Mets last time, that even though they are a team that is not quite as loaded with veteran stars at this exact moment that they were early in the year, they're not really much worse than they were. They were never great to begin with. And so they're not terrible even now in their current state, despite being thinner than they used to be. People are very familiar with the Mets. It's more so with the Pirates to kind of get people acquainted with the fact that they've been just very recently, they have been really shockingly good offensively in pulling runs and scoring runs in all sorts of different manners that you wouldn't normally expect here. So it's a slightly more favorable schedule than some of the other wildcard contenders are facing this last week of the season, but it's not going to be easy. You can't assume a sweep. And if you really play this out, they might need to sweep one of these series to get in. I think that is realistically, when you look at how this is playing out, you'll probably need to win more than 4 out of these 6 games to get in. And that means sweeping at least one of the series. The pitching lines up a little bit better against the Mets. And I think all things considered, that Mets series might be the one that there's more pressure to sweep than the Pirates one. The one that is, I think it's going to be more realistic actually to take that series from the Mets than the Pirates, just considering the way that the Pirates have been playing lately.
It's just hard to see it with the TBDs that line up. You know, it's like even in the Mets series, they have a TBD, right? Again, probably in the Pirates series, they're going to have another one. So it's just unfortunate to see what's going on with pitching. But yeah, I mean, Kyle Nicholas may have a say in the Marlins playoff hopes. So we could talk about that too, but I guess that's for another show. But yeah, he's been terrible in his major league career so far, but maybe Kyle Nicholas has a say in what happens with the Marlins, and that would be interesting as well. So yeah, I don't know. I just look at the pitching, and it's especially when you go to these hitter-friendly ballparks, it's just tough to see it, man. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope they make it in. Just get in. Just get in. That's all you have to do. Just get in, and then we'll see what happens from there. So yeah, the pitching is going to be the huge question mark around this. Offense has been good, but the pitching is going to be the question mark here.
Right, so without further ado, we'll go ahead to fan questions. I left some topics off the board for us because I figure we'll probably get asked about them. But first, consider becoming a super subscriber, super follower, whatever you want to call it. It's all access to Fish on First everything. It is just a base price $3 a month. If you're feeling more generous, you can always donate more. Most of our subscribers do. And once again, all access to Fish on First everything, giveaways, fantasy sports leagues. Romeo here won our fantasy football league last year. I don't know who ended up winning the fantasy baseball league.
He's our winner. Our winner is in here with us. We're gonna bring him in as a speaker in a minute because I don't know if it's official yet. It's about to be official that Sean Millerick is our fantasy baseball.
Is the fantasy baseball champ.
Yeah.
Who won our staff league? I haven't even opened that app in a minute because I'm pretty mad about how my season ended. Maybe Daniel knows.
If I look at our staff chat, I'm not the commissioner of that one, so it'll take me a minute to find it.
That's not important. All right. So, anyways, we have series predictions. I mean, it's too late to win that now. I don't think you're going to be able to get like 70 some odd points in 1 week, but you can be ready for next season. When we have guests, you get first priority. You always have first priority to speak in these spaces, but like when we have guests, like we had Craig Mission the week before trade deadline, had 400 people listening. That's one where you're going to want priority to speak in. I'm thinking this offseason, maybe we get some more fun guests, maybe even some players. We're going to explore some different possibilities on how to keep our viewership up. So you'll want to stay tuned and just make sure you hit that subscribe button on our website, $3 a month, back when price we can make it. We're going to keep it at that price. And once again, all access, Fish on First, anything. If you have any questions, Eli, of course, can answer. But we've got Sean here as our first speaker. And as you heard, won the Super Subscriber Fantasy Baseball League. So his prize is tickets to either 2023 Marlins playoff home game or a game in 2024. And I believe the tickets are in a pretty good spot, right?
Yeah, if you field level tickets, Sean, as some people know from listening to this, he is from out of town. So it doesn't include the airfare to that. I'll have to talk with Sean offline about that arrangement, whether it makes sense for him to fly in from Texas again, because he was just in here from Texas within the last week to see part of this mega homestand that they just finished. But yeah, congratulations, Sean. What's on your mind?
Hey, yeah, thanks a bunch. Yeah, I was just there last weekend for the Braves sweep. So yeah, me flying back in a couple weeks is not going to happen. But hopefully it's a problem. Hopefully though, well, hope that's a conversation I think about having for a couple seconds and then make the right choice and don't ask. my better half if I could jump on that plane. But what's on my mind would be just for keeping happy. Like, what win total this week would you be happy with? I agree with what you said earlier, Eli, that this is probably a 5-1, if not a 6-0 week to get into the playoffs. But what's the win total where you'd be like, all right, great. This is the win total that's probably above most of our expectations. Like, they made a good showing and it just didn't work out. Like, what do they have to do this week for us to be happy about it going into the offseason based on what they did?
A more elaborate answer is because that's just the way Eli is for me personally. I'm just gonna go kind of simple. I 4 wins. Go win both series. I mean, just to show some fight. As long as you win the series, I mean, you can't really control what everyone else does. But I will say that the Cubs do play the Atlanta Braves this week. So it is a good scoreboard watching week. But once again, I mean, the Marlins have some favorable matchups this week. Once again, don't sleep on the Pirates. They've played, spoiler, big time this weekend. But I think if you win 4 games,
I'm going to mute Grant and Grant. I think you should. Grant, while I answer this, I think you should check out.
Lose 2 out of 3 in the other.
Grant was having some audio issues. Grant, request again, and I'll bring you back in just a moment because it was lagging on you.
It's not me, Grant.
Yeah, it was cutting you off every other word. So just.
I thought it was me too. I thought it was was my internet connection screwed up? I actually thought it was me too, but yeah, it's not us apparently.
Yeah,
Well,
so
hopefully Grant comes back soon.
I will hold it down for a few moments while he gets back in here. It was like deteriorating or the previous question as well, but then we got there where we couldn't really understand him. He is correct that I do have a more elaborate answer on this to some extent. My preseason prediction for the Marlins was 79. So today, well, really this weekend, they officially moved past that. That being said, if they lose out against the competition that they're facing this upcoming week, even if they've already reached that number, that would obviously be unacceptable. And that would be really demoralizing considering where they are. And it'd be very uncharacteristic for them to go into a free fall right when they are so close to doing what they're trying to do here. I would simply say if they win three, that's really unlikely to be enough. But if they, as long as they like split these remaining games with the guys that they have right now, which excludes Luis Ariz, we think for the moment. He was the picture that we saw of the team getting on the flight going up to New York today. He's in a walking boot. He's been pretty frank about how badly he feels physically right now. And that was before he came back. And then even more so since he aggravated that injury on Saturday, just in case anybody wasn't on the same page about that. Uh, Apparently, when the lights were flickering for Tanner Scott to come into Saturday's game, that in the brief darkness of those lighting effects, he slipped and he aggravated the injury to such an extent where it's not a guarantee that he's going to be on the field this upcoming week. Knowing Arise the way that we have learned to know him, he is willing to play through so much. He has a pretty high pain threshold. So I would expect him to be on the field at some point, but we don't know how close to 100% he's going to be. We don't know if he's actually going to be an effective player for whatever he's able to give them over this final week. We take that into account. All the aforementioned pitching stuff that we've already gone into super detailed with. Yeah, I'm on the, at this point, on the skeptical side that they're going to be able to win enough and get enough help from the other matchups across the league to get in. I think it's still more likely that they miss out than if they make it in. But I would say if they win at least 3 of these games, they get to be getting to 84. That would be, we are at a point where this is one of the better teams in all of franchise history. And that would also be a 15 win improvement over where they were last year. That's extremely rare. I think that's only happened maybe once or twice in franchise history to make that kind of leap from one year to the next. If they just split these remaining games, I think you can go into the offseason sleeping relatively well about it and kind of understand how they got here. It was looking coming out of that break when they went to that really big slump. It was, you feared the worst. People very fairly were calling it a collapse, and they've done enough since then to right in the ship to show that the first half was not completely fluky. Some of the things that they've done with this roster construction and with this in-game maneuvering seems pretty legit, and it gives me, some almost, as long as they don't totally shit the bed over this last week, I think have some level of optimism about the direction that they're heading in, and I'd be really hopeful that it's not just Skip, but Kim Ng also comes back to keep it going, because I think they've figured something out here, and this is looking like a very significant step in the right direction. The next step is going to be a greater investment from Bruce Sherman in order to keep a lot of the key guys in place in order to make additional upgrades. They're going to need additional upgrades to be that true World Series contender, but they have done enough to give themselves a chance of sneaking into the postseason. And that in itself is a very big win considering where they were in 2022.
Well, I think Philly is definitely in no matter what. Arizona has most likely the most favorable schedule left, right? They're in second right now. They have the most favorable schedule left, no question about it. So I really think this is going to be between the Marlins and the team that currently sits in the third wild card. That's what it's going. That's the Cubs, right? So I think that's what it's going to really come down to is the Marlins and the Cubs. I think that's the teams it's going to come down to. The Cubs have to play Atlanta. Atlanta, of course, you guys know is very, very good. The Marlins have the favorable schedule over the Cubs, right? With having to face the Mets and the Pirates, but these are both on the road. These are both in pretty hitter friendly environments. And with the Marlins pitching being what it is that we talked about before, I don't know. I think it's going to go either way, but I think it's going to be between the Cubs and the Marlins for the last spot. And I'm not wholly optimistic either, just because of what the pitching depth is, Sean. And I said that before. They're going to go into a couple of these games at least with question marks around them, and that's tough to see at this point in the season. So, yeah, this bullpen's worn out. This bullpen has pitched a lot. They're all over the place as well. They have some good guys as well, but then the long guys have been, like Hoeing and stuff, have been just not there. So it's going to come down to innings, I think, and it's going to come down to overall opponents. Cubs have the tougher schedule, but the Marlins, man, they're going to have to get it done against the division rival and then against the Pirates team, who's been on the rise as of late here, unfortunately late in the season. So, man, just knowing the Marlins and knowing the history of this team for being what it is, I'm not wholly optimistic, but I really hope they prove me wrong, because today was really fun, and they had a huge support there today with the fans. The fans today were fantastic. And it was really cool to see that. That was probably the first time this late in the season that I've seen the Marlins fans do what they did with a Dolphins home game in town. The Marlins fans did what they did today, and there was a very good crowd on hand today for the Marlins. And I hope they take that to heart. I hope they show the confidence or just the faith in the fans that the fans have shown them, and get this done. At least get in. If you get out in the first round, whatever, I don't care. But man, today I have a pretty newfound belief. I was expecting not a great crowd today, but the crowd today was fantastic. Those people that were there will know, and I really hope that they can at least get in to honor this level of support that they have had here lately.
All right, so I don't know what happened. We had a similar problem with me in the Craig space where I couldn't hear Daniel asking Craig a question. That was in front of like 350 people. That was pretty embarrassing. What happened right there? I couldn't hear anyone. Were you guys all talking and I just like cut over everyone?
No, the main portion is you were just cutting in and out. You sound totally normal now. It was just for a couple minutes there where it was giving you that robot voice and cutting out every other word.
Thing. I thought that I was just talking to myself. I was like, oh, that's really awkward, but it ended up being pretty awkward in a different way. But luckily, I agree with what Eli said, that the answer Sean's question, at least.
Yeah, so thanks, guys. I mean, I guess for me, the technical answer is 1. I want that winning season. but that would obviously be pretty crushing. It's 3 for me, and hopefully, that's what they can control. Hopefully it keeps being an interesting race the whole week, and it's not a situation where it's kind of over by the weekend. That would suck too. But yeah, hopefully they keep going. And just to wrap up, thanks for taking the question, and certainly also thanks for that opportunity to play in that Super Subscriber League. And that's why people should sign up. It was a blast all year. Competed against a bunch of other Marlins fans. Felt a little dirty using Acuna to push my team forward, but it's a lot of fun. You should all go sign up, super subscribe.
Looks like we've got Romeo here. So we have the fantasy baseball champion of Super Subscriber Leagues, and Romeo wasn't a Super Subscriber League last year, but he won our fantasy football league. We had 4 Super Subscriber spots. And Romeo whooped all our asses with Tua and Tyreek Waddle last year. Romeo's here to ask his question. What do we got?
Bro, they took away all my players this year, man. I couldn't pick none of the 3. None of the 3 of them. They were all gone by the time I got to my pick, so I had to pick fucking Justin Herbert. But back to, I was gonna go, not a rant, but I'm gonna be a man about it, and I was wrong. Matt Moore is as good as I expected him to be. Right, I was getting grilled on Twitter because everybody knows me as the Brian Hoeing guy. Right, I just like Brian Hoeing. Good, he had a bad outing, and I figured that if you're going to use Matt Moore, I didn't think they were going to use him in high leverage because he's not going to be able to be used in the playoffs. But I figured that they were just going to use him as enough innings to just get you over the hump. But I see that I was wrong, so. I know that Hoeing pitched bad and he was really fucking trash this last homestand. Even though versus the Braves, he came out, he allowed those 3 home runs, but he settled down. But He did it again the other day. Gave up 1 run, but just too many runs. They punted it at the end of the day. So I was just going to say my rotation, and I wanted to just see your guys' thoughts on it at the back end of the year. It would, let's say if we do make the playoffs, right, you go Luzardo, the main 3. Let's just leave it at that. And then for your 4th guy, you guys know my stance on Johnny Cueto. I'd use Johnny Cueto for the fourth game if he has to go to 4th game. Just from the experience that he's had in the playoffs. Then the 5th, it's not going to be Brian Hoeing. I think it's going to be. I would use Ryan Weathers. I don't know why. I got some like superstition in my head that Ryan Weathers, if you put him in the playoffs, will actually be good. Like, I don't know what it is. It's just, what would you guys' thoughts on that be if they were to happen?
Well, I can answer your question with a question, I guess, or try to answer your question with a question. What from Ryan Weathers have you seen at the big league level, or even the minor league level for most of the time? What have you seen from, well, I mean, actually, I'll take it back. His tenure at the minor league level has been actually decent, but it doesn't translate to the major league level. So my question for you would be, what have you seen from Ryan Weathers that would lead you to think that he can pitch playoff games?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't have an answer for you. I got a feeling. It's just a feeling in my gut. It's probably never going to happen. But if you gave him a chance, I feel like he wouldn't be 9 innings, 2 hits. But I think that he would be able to give you 6 innings, 2 runs, 3 runs, a couple Ks and a couple walks. I feel like he can get you over the hump to get to Luzardo the next game. I don't know. Like that's an answer for you. I don't know. It's just a feeling in my gut. Like I said, will it happen? Probably not. Would I want it to happen? Probably. And it's because, and I'm gonna leave it at this. It's also because that would be Brian Hoeing's turn in the rotation for me to even say that it would be, if it were to be Brian Hoeing in the play, if we were to make the playoff, it would be his spot in the rotation for the guy, for it to even be Ryan Weathers. I don't know. It's like I said, it's a feeling in my gut. I don't think it's gonna happen. I hope it doesn't happen, to be honest. But if he does get a chance in the playoffs, his dad pitched for us. I'm gonna be honest. Don't know how his dad did it. I know I've seen someone say his dad was like really good for us. I didn't watch baseball back then, but
his dad was a closer. His dad was a closer. He was from the stretch only. He wasn't a starter. David Weathers was his father. He was a closer.
I know his name. I never knew anything about it. I thought he was a starter, but I just never looked back. I don't know. Again, I don't know. It's just a feeling that I have. Like I said.
I'd have to disagree with the feeling about Cueto doing anything in the playoffs. He is not making the playoff roster. They have 12 pitchers that are better than Cueto in the organization right now. He gave us that brief flirtation of having something left in the tank, right? When he came back from the IL, you remember it was the first relief appearance, then the first 2 starts. And since then, he's been just as bad as I think was reasonable to fear since then. He has not been an effective pitcher in any form for close to 2 months at this point. And they're not going to put him on he has no role. This is what I was saying when they brought him off the IL originally, and he made me look silly with how he performed initially coming back from then. But since then, you see the issue where he just serves up so many meatballs, and his only asset at this point is being somewhat efficient because he throws so many. He still has very good control, and he still throws a lot of strikes. Assuming that Brazoban is brought back after this final rehab appearance, that's one other guy that you have into the mix. You have Matt Moore in here as well. They're able to cobble together enough better pitchers ahead of him. But it's only going to be 3. I think it is only going to be 3 conventional starters, no matter how far they go. It's just going to be at this point Luzardo and Braxton and Eddie. And even with Eddie, he's done better since coming back from the minors, but there's still moments in there where his control completely goes away from him. If you could combine Cueto's strike throwing with Eddie's stuff, you'd have a pretty great playoff pitcher in there. And unfortunately, the Marlins can't do that, but they're certainly going to take their chances with Eddie over Cueto. And I don't think they're going to take their chances with Cueto at all. I think from after you get past those top three, at the AAA level, there's nobody you really like down there either, aside from potentially Weathers. But I think Weathers just looks so overmatched in the opportunities that he got that they're not going to call upon him. If you want to go really bold, could look at Pat Monteverde, who pitched really well in his first playoff start. I think he's going to might make one more playoff start before Pensacola's season is over. But he's pitching innings that he's never pitched before. He's in it's that same situation as so many guys in this organization. And for him to skip AAA, I don't know. You just couldn't have any expectations on him either if you brought him into the mix. I think they'll just go with actual major league relievers to kind of cobble together the rest of it after those three conventional starters. And there is precedent for doing that. You can just look at recent playoff history. The Nationals in 2019, they had three starting pitchers and they had not much else beyond that. You can look at even the Brewers, at least one of their postseason runs over this last half decade. I remember them bullpenning a game in each of their first couple series and making it deep into the NLCS before falling over there. Yeah, this team is not going to go with starters that everybody thinks are not ready for this opportunity. They would rather just stitch together with your bullpen at a time of year where there are more off days that make it more feasible for guys to work more than you'd ordinarily expect them to. That's the situation they're in at this point. The confirmation that Yuri is not going to be part of this mix. We were assuming last week that maybe they would keep him around in some form, but then this back issue popped up with him, and that just they have very few options at this point. It's the lack of depth is putting them in a really tough spot. But you could say that about a lot of teams, frankly, at this time of year.
I mean, look at the Braves. I mean, Max Fried went down with another injury, so it's Charlie Morton who would end up picking up that spot. So, like you said, but I was gonna say you can make a reasonable starter out of Hoeing and Soriano out the bullpen, because if Hoeing if you open the game with, let's say, Chargois opens the game, then you go to Hoeing and he can leave you with, let's say, a run or two, right? And you're still in a hittable game. Soriano will give you 2 innings. So let's say you combine those innings. Let's say you give Hoeing 3. That's 6 innings of just bullpen use, and then you go to your 7, 8, 9 guys. If you're in at 7 and 8 guys, and if you're winning the game, you go to Chinese Scott, who's in the 9th. That's just how it's gonna be. I figure that's what, if Cueto doesn't get picked, I think that they'll just do it. They always do it with their money. They're paying him, and the World Series experience is another one. But again, you guys, everybody knows my stance on Johnny Cueto on this Marlins roster. So it was just that. And before I go, I got something to say to Alex. So, Alex, you seen that I stopped working yesterday, so you decided to come to a game the day I don't work? I worked every game pretty much. I missed like 6 games all year. The one game I don't come, you work. The one day I don't go to work, you decide to come. What's going on here, man? You don't like me? It's just like Sean the other day when he left and I was shouting him out. Am I just that much of a nuisance in Marlins Twitter? What's going on here, guys?
Well,
I heard that shout out. I'm so here.
I had a reason to be there today. The great colleagues that I have at Fish on First usually do a very good job of covering the major league side of things, whereas I'm more on the minor league side. I had a reason to be there today, so that's why I was there. And I left, and you can ask Kevin, you can ask Daniel, I left not long after the minor league award ceremony was over, I left. So, yeah, we don't need 4 people at the game. I was there for a reason. I covered it for a reason. And it's nothing against you, Romeo. I wish you were there today because I would have liked to see you and say what's up. But yeah, if you're still with the Marlins next year, then I'm sure we'll see you then.
I don't plan on leaving anytime soon. All right, I'm going to go. All right, I'm going to say goodbye. But did you guys see that Dominican teams made a trade yesterday? I know there's nothing to do, but I don't know which one of those teams are coming to Miami. So
I doubt that either one of them are going to play here. But just did you see that Vladdy got traded for Jose Ramirez in a Dominican league?
Yes.
Talk about
Yes, I did. In Lindom, in the Dominican Winter League, those teams have rights. Well, they draft those players however many years ago. They usually draft them when they're still prospects, and it doesn't mean I'd have to check how often they have even played for those teams over the course of their lives. Because usually, once you make it to the majors and you have a steady job there, they don't even bother doing winter ball in the middle. But you're right that they switched teams once we get to the Caribbean Series, which is coming to Lone Depot in February. The Dominican team that wins Lindom is going to be the one that makes that trip representing the DR. But I don't think those guys are going to be playing winter ball. You do see more of those major leaguers participate in the playoffs, like once they get that far. Like it is kind of obnoxious that they're not involved in the regular season in winter ball for understandable reasons because they're on vacation. But as the major league season creeps closer in January, when that round robin is still going on in the DR, and then when the Caribbean Series happens right basically on the eve of spring training, you sometimes see those established big leaguers actually join because they want to win a ring, or however you value a Caribbean Series ring relative to other things. And also because just to get some reps in and to be around on a case-by-case basis. I would be extremely surprised if either Jose Ramirez or Vladdy play in the Caribbean Series. But we will see. We will see. That's another interesting event that for people that are not aware, that has not been played in the U.S. In decades. I think it's been several decades since before the Marlins were even a franchise. The last time that South Florida hosted a Caribbean Series, it's normally in one of those Caribbean countries. So that'll be pretty fun, and that will be a nice appetizer before we get to spring training, leading right into it.
They've gone to every Caribbean country, and just because of how big the WBC was, I know it was already getting confirmed beforehand, but just it's fun, bro. You guys, it's fun. If you have nothing to like, there's no sports going on. That's Dominican guys trying to find, or Panamanian guys, because we're in it. So I'm gonna be wearing my Panama hat there, going to the games. But those are just guys trying to make the league. It's just like Herbert for Nicaragua, who got during the WBC, who got signed to the Tigers 15 minutes after striking out Soto, Devers, and I don't remember who the last guy was. Those are just guys, like I said, those are just guys. And most active MLB players that were injured also go there as well if their team makes it. So I heard that it's almost sold out. I don't know how true that is, but if you have a chance to go and you have nothing to do on, like, let's say it's only 2 weeks, so it's a Tuesday and there's a baseball game. There's 3 games in a day, so you have a chance to go. That's a nice little treat that you can go watch. But as I say that, I'm going to be leaving, become a super subscriber, and I hope you guys have a good day. Let's get wild and fins up.
Who's next? Looks like Cole's next. Cole, what do we got?
He's been waiting.
Yep.
He did start out.
Open the app up again. Thanks for having me back on. So I guess my first question, how do you see the Cubs doing over the course of their next 6 games? I think they have the toughest schedule of, between us, them, and Arizona. They're playing the Braves for the next 3 games and the Brewers the next 3 after.
And playing all those on the road, too. That is really an interesting twist that the Marlins are ending on the road, but certainly against weaker competition than the ones that the Braves are going against here. Yeah, they're in trouble. That's the reason why even the Marlins, a game behind them at this point, there's reason to be relatively optimistic that they can make up that 1 game between now and then. Because even if those teams, the Braves, have everything clinched and the Brewers are about to fully clinch their division, those teams, even when they take their foot off the pedal, they just have such deep rosters. The Braves because of their offense, and the Brewers because of their pitching staff, that I would be surprised if they won more than, even with those teams kind of taking it easy. I think the best case scenario is them winning 4 out of those 6. And I don't think it will go beyond that because of the depth that those teams have and the fact that they'll be at home. Those guys still have a lot of pride to finish off the season the right way. I think either 4-2 best case scenario, but yeah, I would not be. I'd say it's more likely that you're looking at 3-3 for that Cubs team. If not even 2-4, seems like more stronger possibility than that. It would. They're in a tough spot. Even though things look pretty good against the Rockies, things almost always look good when you play the Rockies outside of Coors Field. So they're really vulnerable. Before that Rockies series, they had lost 7 of their last 8, including a series in Colorado in there. So they are, they're pretty fortunate that they had that hot stretch that they had throughout a lot of July and August to give them some breathing room. There was a time where we were talking about them as a shoo-in to make the postseason, and it just shows, how deep of a rut they were in over the last couple of weeks in order for them to be in so much doubt that they are right now with this. So they are, the Marlins don't have to run the table, I don't think, to leapfrog them, but there is still that 1-game gap. And as we talked about already, like trying to size up these opponents for a 1-game series at this stage of the season, I think ultimately it's a little, there's just no easy way to really handicap this stuff over such a small sample.
Eli's cricket outside of his window is again back and very, 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 very loud. But no, you're right. I really think that the Cubs have a similar starting pitching issue as the Marlins, right? Where they have guys like Jameson Tyone and then Jordan Wicks, who's, of course, just starting out in their rotation. So it's a questionable situation, but I really think it comes down to strength of starting pitching, as I said before. I know I said this earlier tonight, but it's going to be really interesting. And of course, the Cubs have a tougher schedule than the Marlins because they have to play Atlanta, definitely. But yeah, I think it's going to come down to strength of starting pitching. When do these guys show up and how do they show up is pretty much what it's going to come down to for who makes it and who doesn't, to answer your question, Cole. But yeah, it's going to be a fun last 2 weeks of the season. It's just fun to still talk about the Marlins still being in the playoff race this late in the year. Even if they don't wind up making it, I hope they do. But even if they don't wind up making it, it's been a fun year, and yeah, it's cool to see that people are starting to take this team seriously.
Thanks. My next question is, assuming we do make the playoffs, what kind of support do you see Miami giving the team during their homestands?
I was away because I'm trying to get rid of the cricket, but it's not effective, man. It wants me to wrap up the show after like a little over an hour. Say your question one more time while I was away.
Assuming we make the playoffs and we get to a home series, what kind of support do you see Miami giving the team? Because it's been a little disheartening over the past couple of weeks listening up through MLB TV and just hearing like during the Mets homestand, like still a lot of Mets fans, and you hear a lot of these competing teams and their fans are showing up, and it still feels like we're kind of not.
It's going to have quite a bit to do with what else is happening in town at that time. If we look at the way that the schedule is lining up, I know the Dolphins are on the road next week, and then they're back home on October 8th. And I think that would be, I'll have to look ahead to like exactly see how the home games for the division series line up with stuff like that, with between college football and the NFL, and see if there's any overlap there, because I think that is a pretty decent factor overall. I think even outside of that, usually you see the big bump in support the year after a year like this. It doesn't happen immediately, and I don't think you're going to be seeing postseason sellouts unless they make it all the way to the World Series. People take a lot of time to catch on, and fans that feel most strongly about this team have had their hearts broken, and they've been frustrated for year after year after year. And it takes more than just like one really inspiring feel-good run to win them back. I don't think that will really happen until 2024. So you're going to see good support, but I think realistically, 25,000, 30,000 is the range that you're looking at for a postseason home game, more so than anything close to a sellout, which would be what, 37,000 down here. It's really going to depend on the day of the week that it happens, and exactly what else is going on around town at the time. And it's also a new challenge for this ticket sales department that has never promoted postseason games at this ballpark for the Marlins ever. That's a new experience for them to get the word out and to incentivize people to come in away from what they'd ordinarily be doing in October.
If Eli's cricket has a say in the matter, if everybody at the park, even if it was like a crowd of 1,500, Eli's cricket and everybody had that kind of modicum about them, then we would have a very loud stadium. But yeah, no, I said this twice already. I'm not going to say it again, Cole, but I did say it twice earlier in the show. I was really impressed with today. With the Dolphins in town, the Marlins still had a really, 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 really loud crowd. So, but yeah, no, Eli's right. Like this market is very fickle. It's about what have you done for me lately. They see that this team is still in the hunt, and they showed up today. If they're in the playoffs, I would expect there to be decent crowds. I don't know about sellouts either. I probably wouldn't say sellouts, but I would expect decent crowds. And then if they go on a deep run, then you could expect the very high volume crowds. But yeah, no, it was refreshing to see today. I've said that already, like I said before, but yeah, it's going to depend on how far they go. And their success. It's just a what have you done for me lately market, and the Marlins understand that as well. So, there were still dollar tickets today, right up until game time. So, you could still go to the game for $1 right up until game time. So, it just depends on how far they go and what their success looks like. That's going to depend on that.
I think you guys are underestimating how much playoff games bring in fans a little bit. I think if they do host a game, it will obviously be the National League Division Series, most likely against the Dodgers. And I think it's almost a certainty that there would be at least 28 to 30,000 people there, if not a sellout. I don't remember any playoff game. Granted, the Marlins are a different story here, obviously, but I don't think there's ever been a Major League Baseball playoff game with less than 25,000. And yeah, taking the fact that it's the Dodgers, taking the fact that it's been 20 years since fans have been able to attend a playoff game in this market, I think there's no way in heck that it's below 28 to 30,000 people. There's no way. I have faith in these fans. I think it would be like 32,000 people for Game 3 of the National League Division Series. That's my prediction.
This city loves, if I can just jump in before I sign off, this city loves watching a winning team, a team that they could say is a winner. I agree with Isaac entirely. There'll be 30,000 people there, 20,000 of which will act like they've been there the whole time, when they probably haven't been to a game since Hanley was playing for the team. But Miami would turn out for an opportunity to be at something that's considered an event, unless it is during the Dolphin game.
Yeah, and if not for the Division Series, I know Eli mentioned the World Series, you're going to tell me that they go to the National League Championship Series with only 4 teams left, that it's not going to be a sellout every time? I have more faith in the Miami fan base than that. I think there's no shot that it's not a sellout for however many games there are at home for that series. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but anyway, that's my thought.
Right. Exactly. It just depends on how deep this run is going to be, if there's a run at all, but we'll see.
My last question is, a couple years ago, I think 2 to 3, Bruce Sherman said that he would be willing to spend when the time was right. So is the time right this upcoming offseason? Do you see him, laying down some money?
He has.
He has laid down money. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead, Isaac.
No, I think he has. I think they're going to have to make some decisions for next season's payroll, assuming you can keep one of either Bell or Soler. And I don't think that he's just going to, save the money and not put it back out on the field. Let's say if Soler does not come back, I think he will use that money and then some on either a shortstop or a catcher. You obviously need to replenish those 2 positions for the 2024 season. But yeah, I would say that he has spent. So whether you can say he spent it correctly or not, that's a different story. But they have spent a good amount of money since the beginning of the 2022 season. So yeah, I think you can continue to expect him to do so. I think he's delivered on that promise.
100%. No, I wholly agree. I mean, just the Sandy extension, the Avi money, whether the Avi money was correctly spent or not, they spent on Avi. There's much money being spent here. Whether it's being spent properly or not, that's a different conversation. But I don't think it's fair to say that Bruce Sherman has not spent money on this product, because he definitely has. So yeah, there's definitely money that is involved here. Like I said, is that the right way to spend it? We can debate that till the cows come home, but it would be very unfair to say that Bruce Sherman has not spent money this year on the Marlins.
Is there a player in this free agency class that's going to be, like, either at the shortstop or catcher position, that's going to be worth the money?
Well, I'm back, and I think I got the cricket situation resolved. The one catcher who's I don't know if he's a clear answer. He's a very tricky player to size up, would be Mitch Garver, who as the season has gone on, he has gotten even better offensively, to a level that you just very rarely see from catchers at all. The, Now, to this point, he entered today with an 882 OPS, and that's not even dramatically better than his career average. He spent most of his career with the Twins. Then after a down year last year, now hitting about as well as ever as a pending free agent. He's going to be 33. And for this year, he's been used more as a DH than he has as a catcher. Somebody that has there have been mixed reviews about how good he is defensively. And now he's entering a stage of his career where you don't know how it's going to hold up. The big complication is that he just doesn't play games. He hasn't played anything remotely close to a starter's workload in any single season of his career. A lot of injuries lately, and then very early on, there was a little inconsistency in terms of getting opportunities on the playing field for Mitch Garver. And year to year, if you just go through his career, there's just a lot of volatility as well. But the free agent class is so thin at both of those positions, at both catcher and at shortstop, that he's the one that really sticks out, where if you extrapolate his production over a full season and you think that he could still be more of a catcher than a DH, then he would be a pretty massive upgrade for them. Just due to the scarcity of quality catchers out there, I really have no clue exactly what kind of deal he would get. He would certainly get a multi-year deal just because of the level of his hitting prowess, both this year and his career average in there. And I think you're looking at something north of, even with his limited playing time, he's got to easily crack 10 million a year as my cricket has come back in here. But Mitch Garver is the one that I think over the coming weeks, he's worth really studying extremely carefully, because just rare offense from the catcher position, but also a lot of red flags that come with him as well.
Eli, how do you sleep with that loud, obnoxious cricket outside your window?
No, it just, this is the first night that it has shown up. It shows up in the fall, doesn't show up over the course of the summer. So tonight's the first night in a while that I remember it in here. It's not usually an issue.
All right, well, it looks like we got Sharif in here as well to ask a question. How many other requests do we have after Sharif? Just because we don't do the co-host thing just because of how it messes up the rest of the system.
We got two more after him with LMF and with Specs, both super subscribers.
Gotcha. Well, Sharif, the floor is yours, sir.
Hey, hopefully everyone is well. Yeah, hopefully you get, to take care of that cricket, Eli. But I think one of the things that interests me still is how are we going to get through the next 40 innings of starting pitching. And that's what really is interesting to me, because we know that Sandy shut himself down. We know, we definitely know we have to go into 4 rotation. We can't just say 5-6 man rotation anymore. We have to say 4-man rotation. And this is where I have to ask, is Weathers still up with the team? Because if it's still up with the team, then maybe you can go half and half. Weathers
but Cueto is cooked at this point, trying to, it's not about just, hey, give us innings. We have 6 games left. To me, if Weathers is still up with the team, I think a similar situation where you sent down Cabrera and he actually came up keeping the ball. I'm wondering if that fascinating experience could happen with the Weathers, because like I keep saying this, 87 and his sliders is pretty awesome. And they can keep him in the strike zone, then maybe this guy can give you 16 innings, before the season is done. And my thing is, you're already Luzardo, Cabrera. I mean, Cabrera has barely just made himself a promise again in terms of a 3-man starting head. So Cabrera has actually made himself eligible for us to be, sure of him again. But now that leaves the 4 starter. So if we're going into a Milwaukee series next, or a Mets series next, I'm sorry. Are we playing Mets next?
3 in New York, 3 in Pittsburgh, day off tomorrow. And just to address the Weathers, he is not on the active roster. I think they talked about it earlier in the spaces. I don't disagree.
Right.
They could maybe use him. He actually made his major league debut in the postseason in 2020, and he has been fantastic for AAA Jacksonville since being sent back down. So yes, I would not be surprised. I know these guys won't like that idea, but I wouldn't be surprised if you saw Ryan Weathers either pitch again in the regular season or get a postseason roster spot. I have that inkling.
Yeah, because I think right now it's all in now. And, whether it's going to be an embarrassing move or where he gets light up, but what else do you have, right? So when it comes to after Braxton, Luzardo, and Cabrera, and if Cabrera actually gets through and we're 2-1 or 3-0, we have to think about combining, a Cueto to start the game and maybe in the 3rd or 4th inning. Because at this point now we see where Cueto can actually give you 6, but he always gets himself into issues. So maybe you can do a 3 2/3 or squeak something out of him and give the ball to Weathers to carry you to the 6 2/3, and then you can turn it over to our awesome bullpen. And that's because if we do make it to the postseason, my thing is we just got to get to the 6th inning anyway, because these guys, our starters, are maxing out in career innings. So it's not like they're going to do the Josh thing and carry us. No, these guys got to get to the 6th and play off game 1, and then we got to get to the bullpen. So my thing is we got to try and leverage whatever good arms or favorable arms we have left.
Yeah, I brought it up earlier, Sharif, that Weathers would be one of the first guys that they would go to, but that's not because he is it's not because he is like the ace or rotational starter that the Marlins really need right now. It's just basically out of necessity. So yeah, this guy has been up and down, basically his entire minor league career, and then lately here he's also been up and down. Like he was good for a few starts, like Isaac said, in a stretch, and then his last start he came out and allowed 5 runs in 5 innings. So it's just like the limitation of stuff for Ryan Weathers is what really inhibits him. The stuff that Ryan Weathers has is not fantastic. He has a very, very straight fastball. It's like 92, 93. He has a pretty good slider, but then a third pitch, I don't think he really has a third pitch. So I really don't think that he has the stuff necessary to succeed as a full-time starter. Maybe he could be like a long relief type guy, but that's the innings the Marlins need right now. They need innings from guys like this. So yeah, you need the innings, and if that's Ryan Weathers, it's Ryan Weathers. But as I said before, it's just it's an unfortunate circumstance for the state of the system when it comes to pitching.
Yes, it is. Yeah, because be honest, it's refreshing to see Bell come around, and so it may mean that Villa Cruz, it's time for him to slump. I'm hoping I'm wrong, but whenever someone is slumping, this is when someone else like Berger has just been carrying this team. Even Arise has been carrying this team, and then all of a sudden, Bell, we forget about Bell. So I just think the offense can do enough, but I just think we need to get to the 6. And if it's only like you said, he goes 3-3. I can actually go 4-2. But my thing is, if we can get to Nardi, that's my thing. If we 4-man rotation here, right? And then you only have 2 games left. So I don't know why you even think it. You need a 4-man rotation, and you need to try to drive this thing home with Luzardo in the last. Luzardo and Brad. Other than that, I'm pretty appreciative of the entire season. I know someone is gonna bring it home because the phenomenon that is going on in Miami, it's pretty ridiculous right now. You got Inter Miami, Messi. You got the girls. You got the success of the Florida Panthers. Jimmy Butler nearly bring it. The Marlins are on, they're in a great position to help this Miami community in that aspect. And I think that we have an easier road because one full game to the Cubs, I think that's to do. That's not asking a lot at all. And if you look who they have to face, Braves and Milwaukee, good luck. So I would just say 6 innings apiece by Braxton and Luzardo. You try to get back to be able to ask yourself, Cabrera may need his help in Game 3, and after that, you gotta ask yourself, what you're gonna do in Game 4. I think that might be a game you just let Hoeing and Moore and the other guys, give. I guess that's a game we possibly could give away because as we've seen, our bullpen and starts haven't been working out pretty well for us lately. So that's the only thing that kind of concerns me is starters that we have left. What are we going to combine to get to 6 innings in Game 4? And I'm okay on the hitting right now because there's always someone carrying us. So thank you, and appreciate you guys.
I think this is a good point to bring up, by the way. Just like looking past the Marlins and looking at the South Florida sports market as a whole, right? You see the Dolphins with what they did today. You see Inter Miami with Lionel Messi, right? You see all these other teams that are finding success, the Heat with what they have done in the past, right? So you see all of these teams and what they've done in the past, and now you're sitting right. Definitely want to be part of what's going on here in South Florida lately. So I think that's a really good point to end on, Sharif, and always appreciate you coming in to speak on all these spaces. So it's always awesome to hear from you. But yeah, definitely a really good point to end on from you. So appreciate that.
All right, LMF up next. What do we got? I believe it's LMF and then Specs. I believe we're done after that. Correct, Eli?
Yes.
All right, Eli, please get yourself a tarantula, and we'll have fun with some videos watching it to kill that cricket. I like going last. This is second to last, because I hear everybody else's comments, so I get to like throw in some things that no one likes to hear from me anyway. Alex, you got a point exactly with the crossovers that the Marlins did this season to gain fandom from the other teams who were just successful, like the Heat, Panthers, etc. So I think they did a good job partnering, making those T-shirts and getting the Heat Twitters and the Panthers Twitter and social media to really help them promote. Y'all underestimate this South Florida fan base when it comes to baseball playoffs. We filled the football stadium with 100,000 spectators for baseball in 03. We hold that record. It was pretty cool. So I just wanted to say that I fully expect that place to be sold out like the World Baseball Classic loud for us. And, of course, the other fan base will travel in. Everyone keeps mentioning the Cubs in their hard series left, or remaining season left versus the Braves and, I guess, Milwaukee they finish up with. Milwaukee and both Braves have clinched playoff spots. Braves clinched the number 1 seed. They're not going to be full force this week. They're going to rest their guys. So especially next weekend, that doesn't help the Marlins. Pittsburgh and New York, as we did to the Mets last season, they want to ruin our season. So they're going to play their hearts out. Got some other notes here. Prepay your parking if we do get playoffs. Yeah, definitely don't want to have to park a mile away from the stadium. All right, why didn't they, now it's my question, why did Sandy pitch in AAA and not pitch Friday night versus Milwaukee instead? No, we could play devil's advocate here or play Sunday morning, Monday morning quarterback, but if, he did pitch well and then was injured, at least he would have done it in the big leagues. Anyone know why they did that, or was that spoken about?
I would think that probably it's a rehab start before anything, right?
Yeah, I see what you mean, Chase, but you can't just put out your MVP and throw him out there back against Wolves in a regular season start like that. He needs to have a rehab start to make sure he's healthy enough to perform at the highest level in the major leagues again. So, yeah, it would have been unheard of for him to come off the 15-day IL with forearm strain and then a UCL sprain and just put him back in the major leagues like that. That was never going to happen.
And we wish Sandy the best, of course, Yuri as well. It's sad to see them go down. You got to be proud of what this team has done this year. To everyone listening, or hope no one left, but to everyone listening, be proud of what this team has accomplished. And everything, the injuries, going from 41 one-win losses to, I think, 32 one-run wins, I should say, and whatnot. So you got to be proud of what this team has done. 81 wins, a 500 season now. I could see them winning 3 more, hopefully 4, but really, realistically 3. They haven't done a 500 season, I think, since 2010. And it's just wonderful. And we should be happy. We should be proud. Be proud of yourselves for coming out the way y'all did this weekend for the Mets series versus the Detroit series. Show up and show out and help grow this fan base. There's one comment in the comments, tweets to you guys in the chat where someone tried to throw Skip under the bus here and say something about this is not something Skip did. You shouldn't get credit for this. I'm in 100% disagreement with that. I think Skip brought this culture in with him. You could tell by the way even Coop, before he left, was speaking about the culture in that locker room. Do y'all agree with that?
Yes.
One word answers. 3. Overall, be proud of the Fish on First team as well, in their partnership with Fish on the Minors, or Fish on the Farm. Sorry, Alex. You guys do a great job. I look forward to seeing what you put together on the off season. Now that it's under your control, and the way mid-season, how he just moved it over seamlessly, basically, was really cool. Proud to be a super subscriber, as everyone should be. Help you guys continue to make your monies and continue to do what you do. I kind of look forward to the days where y'all are traveling with the team on the plane and being part of that high up as far as media is concerned. So congrats to you guys and everyone listening. It's been a fun season. Hopefully we get more of this. It's not over yet. We're going to enjoy this week. Win, lose, or draw. Be proud. Keep watching. And let's go Marlins. Let's get louder. Good night, everyone.
All right, I believe Specs will take us home here. Been one of our longer shows we've had in a minute, which is good. Thank you all for coming out, of course. We've had some lower viewership recently because of football, but luckily the Sunday night game's a doozer. Is that even a word? It is a stinker, let's say that. But we got Specs here. The man caught the Braves cheating a couple months ago. Anyways, we'll go here with our last question.
Hello? Can you guys hear me?
Indeed, yes.
Thank you for that. But one thing, with Sandy being out, it looks like he's going to get, Tommy John surgery and probably gone for 2024. Are there any free agents that we're looking at? Any free agent starters, like maybe Sonny Gray, or maybe work on a project like Martin Perez or something like that? What are your thoughts?
Well, I guess just because of Eli's cricket, I thought he was going to take this. I think it's early to be looking at it. Probably a conversation for a future show, just because you got to figure out what's even going to happen this offseason. I think your holes you have to address, and it's already rumored that the Marlins are going to address, are shortstop and center field. Or not center field, catcher. Because, Jazz might be the answer in center field, maybe for at least like another year or two. I don't know how long he's going to last out there. But he's done a good job out there so far. But shortstop's definitely your biggest answer. What are you going to do with Soler? I think it is definitely an obvious statement to say that the offense kind of outperformed itself a little bit this year. And I think that there's enough answers to it within the organization to answer starting pitching at least for next season. So I don't expect the Marlins to go put assets into or go spend money on guys on the free agent market for starting pitchers. I think the Marlins are going to have to succeed a lot again on the trade market again this offseason, just taking a look at who's available out there on the free agent market. But I think your main storylines are, will you see any extensions, such as a Rise or Luzardo, even Yeri they go for? Do you retain Soler? Does Bell opt out? I know Craig Mish has been adamant about him opting out. Boris client, you never tell. But maybe Isaac's got something else. But I haven't even thought that far ahead. But I would imagine that they're going to put money elsewhere first.
Yeah, well, Johnny Cueto is a free agent, so I don't know if the Marlins would be interested in re-signing him.
And Urena as well.
Yeah, right. In all seriousness, I don't know. The guy who pitched today for the Brewers, maybe they could use him. Julio Teheran might be available. I can't believe he's still pitching, but there's a few free agent options that shouldn't be crazy expensive that I would expect them to acquire. Even the guy they tried to trade for, Michael Lorenzen, I believe is a free agent at the end of the year. Someone like that, even though he's been god-awful for Philadelphia. After that no-hitter and game against the Marlins in his Philly debut, he's been very bad, so maybe it's a decent buy-low option. But yeah, that's definitely the minute that there's an E next to the Marlins name in the standings is when we'll probably dive into that a little bit deeper.
Was it actually said that Sandy could be out? I know he's out for the rest of this year, but was it actually said that he could be out in 2024?
If he gets TJ 100%, yeah.
He did not commit to that. There's no speculating here. He did not. He needs to sit down with his agent, with Kim, with Skip, and discuss the next moves. But he did not. He said, quote, I have no idea on whether this injury could affect him for next season, but we can use our brain and think that if he does undergo surgery, obviously he would not be available for next season.
Yeah.
So, but they did not imply that they were going to go to surgery or not. They gave us nothing regarding what they're leaning towards on that front.
Yeah, because I didn't think I saw anything about next year. I know I saw this year. I didn't think I saw anything about next year. But let's wait and see. Injuries are a tricky situation, especially for pitchers. So let's see. He's out for the rest of this year, and we'll see what goes on in spring training, and we'll see exactly where Sandy's at. Is what I can say for that. I mean, obviously the Marlins have a lot invested in this guy for a very good reason. And we'll just see where he's at once February comes about.
All right, and one last thing. Just want to thank you guys. You guys have done an amazing job this entire season. To be honest, I've never watched so much baseball until I followed you guys. And I live in Miami and the Keys, so I got that long drive in between, and I always listen to you guys. So thank you guys for that as well. But that's all.
Oh, we appreciate it. That's why we do this. This is why we do it. To anyone who began listening either last offseason when we started this season, earlier this season, I was thinking back to some of the older shows we did at the beginning of this one. And it's been a long ride. It's been a fun ride as well. 156 games down, 6 more to go. Hopefully next week when we hop back on this, which we are planning on doing right at the conclusion of the Pirates game, I think we agreed upon that. I think that would be at least our best move anyways. Hopefully we're going to be talking about watching some postseason baseball for the Miami Marlins. That is the hope, 100%. So thank you all for coming out. We got another one of these for the cap off the regular season. And once again, hopefully look towards the postseason at the conclusion of the Pirates game next Sunday. That's a 3:00 start. All the games start at the same time. So, Eli, you got one last thing?
Yes, I just wanted to endorse that idea because that Pirates game should be ending right around 6 Eastern. The sun will still be up and the crickets will not be out yet. So I think that is the best course of action.
I think, yeah.
Eli lives in the woods.
Yeah. Last year we did do like a season-ending spaces. Even when the Marlins lost 90-plus games, we had pretty good listenership to that right after that final Braves game where they dropped like 13 runs. So I think no matter what the situation is, heartbreak or not, I think we'll do it at the conclusion of Game 162. We will see you next week. Stay tuned to All Fish on First Content this week. We believe we'll have boots on the ground at all 6 games this week. We'll talk about a Marlins postseason clinch next week.